Howdy folks, welcome to the channel, Rockin' the Country. I am doing part 2 now, as you saw the title, of the documentary of Dwight YOAKAM's The Making of his PEARS album. And this is courtesy of Renee Mooberry, who made 2 gifts to me to do this. It was a fairly lengthy, well, relatively documentary, so I broke it down into 2 parts. So thank you, Renee. And let's see what she had to say. Oh, yes. At the end of this video, there's a photo credit for Emily Joyce, and it turns out she eventually married Dwight. So, as the world turns. So thank you for this, Renee. And let's get into this. Dwight is, I don't know. It's funny, having been a philosopher, I am that, but I mean, we all are in our own ways, but philosophy major, I like to analyze and assess things, and you get into definitions of things and how we explain them. The word unique comes up a lot in reference to Dwight, including myself when I was reacting to probably the first 20 songs of his. I'm like, he is so unique. And in this video, people describe him the same way. How do you know unique when you see it? How's that?
You know, that's a normal function. It makes sense to me to go in that environment, listen to what you're doing, and because it gives you a sense of where it stands with everything else you're listening to. It's an amazing reference point.
When you listen to something so much, you have to have some kind of a ground zero where you know what it's going to sound like, and it always sounds the same.
But it's always fun to go in there because it always does
Corvette.
Sound great. But he's able to go, yeah, it sounds great, but it needs more this, less that, because he's been living in that environment.
This is Dwight's Corvette, where he does this listening to his music.
I hurt my back making this record with this thing right here. This was packed actually with more CDs than this. These are each individual roughs at given times or mixes. And I kept going to my car and listening to it.
Dwight would call and see if I could meet him in his car in front of Warner Brothers.
And we'd sit there with that Chevy engine running, just belching heat on us, listening to the tunes of the day.
So that's how we did it. In the car in front of Warner's. He played stuff and I'd go, that's great. Or, you know, maybe you should add this, or you could use this kind of color.
And he would give me suggestions and I would run things by him and let him hear the latest track. In fact, the first time I showed up at Chris Lord Algie's, I think I had twice this many. I probably had 30 CDs.
And he just spreads all these CDs out. And it was like a hoarder.
Thanks to Lenny, thanks to Chris, this has narrowed itself down to this. And this, you see, fits really nicely in this little zip leather pouch. In fact, it just lays real nice and flat, smooth. Just as it should be. So now things are kind of back to normal. And I don't have to yank my rotator cuff out of.
It was fun to hear what he did and how he took the songs that he had talked about and made it into what's on this record.
The place that the album started was with Beck in his studio. One thing specifically together called A Heart Like Mine that was, to my ear, the first time I did something that you could call cowpunk. Cowpunk was a term in the early 80s that was applied to the scene that was going on around the clubs in LA.
I wonder how that was received.
The first time we got together, he just got up and started playing songs for me on his acoustic guitar and singing to the rafters.
He started turning on mics and you know, setting up the track I said, what are you doing? Well, we just, it's a scratch, right? He goes, no, we just record it. I said, no, but I'm not gonna play it. Probably it'll be, he said, why not? You know, I was like, well, I don't know, it doesn't sound good enough. And he said to me later, he said, look, we've gotten guys to come in and maybe play note for note more perfectly. Yeah, but it won't sound like this.
Yeah.
I think I tried to encourage him to just let it have his personality in it and just be what it is.
It's no formula.
And I said, yeah, you're right. It won't sound like this. And so let's make this be the sound. And we did. We tracked the record. Even though, you know, something is intellectually better, sonically maybe more polished, if you will, sometimes it's better to let it be, as Paul McCartney said all those years ago.
I love this stuff.
I love that we recorded live. That's really important in making records that the band plays together.
Because to make the kind of record that we made, you really still need to be in a real live room.
He's got ideas and like things that he wants to hear, like kind of a vibe or a style or something that he's kind of going for.
Dwight would come in and start singing it and start playing it and say, this is what we want. And we'd start hashing out different ideas and different feels and just kind of find where the song needed to go.
A lot of times he would just come in and play it on an acoustic guitar. He would just play it for us and we would figure it out. Because I feel like a lot of the time it wasn't set. The arrangement wasn't decided before we got to the studio.
What's the storyline of the song? I have no idea. What's the concept of the song? Song's going to tell me.
All right. What just popped into my head was like, Whitney Houston, for example, I mean, she's passed, but I mean, when she was recording and touring and all this stuff, when she was making albums, Whitney would not get away with what Dwight does, for example. Now, Whitney, phenomenal voice, obviously. Her mother, phenomenal voice. Her mother was one of the backup singers for Elvis. But there are some artists in some genres that can get away with basically rough cuts or doing what was just described that he did when he went into Beck's studio, and Beck just turned on all the microphones and stuff, and Dwight's like, what are you doing? He's like, no, this is what we're using. This is the personal, unique, basically. But it was in a genre, cowpunk, that you could get away with an imperfect sound. That's one of the reasons YouTube is so popular, is because it isn't as polished as what you see on television. And so it's not as scripted, it's not as formulaic, it's not as predictable, and you're going to get, you know, like more of the personality of the artist. But like Whitney Houston, people loved her music. I'm using her as an example because it was so good in not merely technical, but it was very technical, but it was really good because Whitney brought what she brought to the table, and she had the top producers and all this stuff. But Whitney could not get away, opinion obviously, with just going in and screwing around in the studio in a sense, like Dwight could. Because that's just Dwight, that's part of his uniqueness. Like, he gets away with a lot of stuff, but he does it with a smile, right? When you do things with a smile, it's amazing what you can get away with. But Dwight just has that certain something that lets him get away with it.
And that's the way I approach the album. The album is really going to convey what each musical moment that I had in creating it decides to convey.
Roy Orbison.
He kind of has a big picture idea of what he wants, but a lot of the tracks on this record have just kind of like developed and morphed and changed a lot from where we would kind of bang him out at a sound check.
He's great at coming in with a really strong, awesome, natural instinct of what the song should do, and then willing to see the possibilities of it going somewhere else.
The music we made on any given day in this room or the other studios, I want to try to remain as close to intact to the emotional excitement that the band and I had and the engineers on the day we created the track in a studio.
I said, you know, I was potting down and up. I was turning down while you were singing, and then I turn up for the leads, and then I come back down. And he said, oh, you were? I said, yeah. And he said, oh, don't do that. And then he said, I'll never forget these. Don't be tasteful. Why on earth would you be tasteful? And I just thought, oh, that's the greatest thing anyone's ever said to me. And that is, I think that has been sort of the
Told you it was a philosopher, Renee.
That's been the umbrella statement for this whole experience so far, is don't worry about being tasteful. We'll worry about that later. Just play out, be big.
And right off the bat, it gave it its own color and its own, you know, its own story and its own identity.
One of the coolest things was when we were all in the same room and the energy of everybody just all with the same direction coming together, and it's a couple of real magical tracks.
That's what punk is.
Waterfall. It has some deep moments in it that I really want to appreciate what he's saying in it. But from a sonic standpoint, besides his beautiful singing, I thought he nailed it. He nailed it.
We've been kind of going over it a few times, just trying to find the right groove and how we were going to do this. And he was playing a bunch of different things, trying different guitars. We were trying a bunch of different grooves. And I just started kind of playing this blue, blue, just kind of weird, very different, not country bass line at all. Kind of a two-note, like a double stop thing on the bass, and that ended up being like drums and bass for a lot of the song. Like the whole first part of the song is just that.
And so on the verses, we cover the drums with towels, sort of, and it's ripping off the Beatles on Abbey Road.
Babies get born even in a war.
That line is incredible.
And that was just one of those kind of magical, inspired moments. Everybody kind of filled in and just turned out to be really interesting.
And my heart still believes that love for what we need can be enough. If we'll just stop keeping score. If I had a big giraffe, tried to dance and made us laugh, every smile and giggle would be free.
Love his voice.
The thing that really stood out to me more than anything else was the confidence. When you hear the record, you feel like somebody's in total command of that record, and it's him.
But there's a joyfulness in this. This is a hopeful record. I think it's a perfect record for the time he is at in his life.
You know, like when you first discover rock music and you're in the garage with your friends playing, is kind of what it makes me think of.
It's much more about feel. It's much more about...
That's what punk was.
About emotion.
And the thrill of playing music that makes people dance and spin and girls happy and smile and cheer and giggle, it's the best.
This may be as good as any record he ever made.
Is it country? I don't know if it's country, but it's Dwight, and it's cool.
I hope they like it. I hope anybody that hears it likes it, enjoys it, and it makes the moments, the 3 minutes they're listening to, is 3 minutes that's brighter or happier in their day.
And contemplative. Let's wait for the credit.
Three pairs of glasses, three pairs of shades.
Spell the system wrong.
Three pairs of other things, all there in space. Three pairs of shoeless feet, three mindless dogs, three pairs of wishes for all that you want.
Yes.
That means where you are is where you at.
I suppose.
When your head is cold, to put on a hat. If you can't recall, just remember that.
There she is.
Just remember, don't forget to, boys, let's go. Oh man, have you had enough?
In spades, 3 pairs of shoeless feet, 3 mindless stars.
I love the insight in these things, Renee, and of course, being a life coach, but having been born with perhaps an unhealthy dose of compassion, which is to say too much of it for my own good sometimes, I look at the human component to these things and what each person deals with and how we interpret it from the quote unquote outside. And when I see things like this, it's just Dwight doing what makes sense to him in the moment, trying to figure things out, no different than any of the rest of us. Like, we tend to look at these folks like they're up here, like demagogues and such, and it's not that way. I mean, he's got this Corvette, which is a ridiculous vehicle to begin with because they're not comfortable. They're fast. And, they're not even expensive compared to Italian vehicles, Lambos and Ferraris and all that. But you get a souped up vet. I don't know. What would they go for? Some of you folks should know out there. 150 grand maybe top of the line. And they're fast, but they are not made for comfort. He's got the sound system in his. Nowhere to put anything, of course. And when you trick something out with a sound system, it takes up the limited amount of space you have anyway in the vehicle. And so he's got this pouch of CDs that he's got to pull out. He says he's damaging his rotator cuff and hurting his back. You might not have picked up on the precursor to his rotator cuff comment, to where making that album or record or whichever it was hurting his back because he had all these CDs jammed in behind him because there's nowhere to put them. But that's how, in his brain, it made sense to get these songs made. And you're like, from the outside, you're like, that's just dumb. But you know what? That's us humans. That's what gives us our signature, our personality. We're all individuals, no matter what we're in, whether you're the president, whether you're a king, whether you're a queen, whether you're an artist. There was an athlete, I forget who it was, and this was about 15, 20 years ago. He's a professional, either basketball or football player, and he wound up being out for like a month because he was in his home on the phone and he sprained or broke his foot. How? He was coming down the steps and he mistimed it. You think there's an extra step or there's one fewer step and you miscalculate? He did. Professional athlete. You'd think the coordination, but humans are humans. And Dwight in this, I like the commentary. I like the insight into how things are mixed. You don't get a lot of insight, but you get some additional information on the process. And I don't know if Clear Mountain is still the top of the hill in that one, but they used to be. And the engineering, and you go into the studio and people just bandy about ideas. And most ideas go nowhere, just like in any other realm, whether it's in physics, math, English, architecture, whatever it may be, it goes nowhere. Same thing in the arts. You come up with lots of ideas. But the one thing the guy did say about Dwight is that when he comes in, he has an idea about where he wants to go with a given thing, and he's open to modifying it a bit, but he doesn't lose sight of that original thing that he was looking to communicate to the public once the record is made. How to make it, then you get into the minutia, and Dwight evidently is very good at minutia, which is also the hallmark of a philosopher. I keep coming back to that, Renee, because when I hear him talk and dissect thoughts and ideas and such, I'm like, no, that's very much a philosophical mindset where you have big ideas, but you also, you can do the minutia. You've got the patience, the tolerance, even the desire for it, and you can do the big picture thinking. So, all right, guys, you can thank Renee Mooberry, Dwight YOAKAM's worldwide #1 fan, for that. And I don't know what else we'll get into. There is so much stuff out there, and I'm enjoying this journey of traditional country. Could be neo-traditional, but certainly non-pop country. And Dwight, I don't know. I thought of the Clash a few times during this, because if cowpunk is that, well, the Clash's album in the '80s, London Burning, and so on. Rolling Stone had that as the most I think the most impactful album of the '80s, the entire decade. Phenomenal stuff, but it was raw. So there it is. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Have a great day. You can thank Renee Mooberry for that one. I'll see you on another video and keep rocking the country.
I think I had twice this many. After I had 30 CDs.
And he just spreads all these CDs out. And it was like a hoarder.
And thanks to Lenny, thanks to Chris, this has narrowed itself down to this. And this, you see, fits really nicely in this little zip leather pouch. In fact, it just lays real nice and flat, smooth. Just as it